Very good day, everybody, and welcome to this, our Maundy Thursday commemoration. I call it a commemoration because it's not a service that's just filled with celebration. There are a lot of aspects to it, and there are three main things, in fact, that we commemorate during this time and in this particular service. And I thought that instead of going through the liturgy, I'd say a little something about those things that we celebrate. And so here we go. The first reading came from Exodus chapter 12. Now that reading describes the Passover, that first Passover when the firstborn of Israel, nation that was going to be birthed, as Israel at least, were spared. The firstborn was spared and the Passover was celebrated. What we celebrate at this service is the institution of the Lord's Supper, the beginning of taking of Holy Communion. And why it's important, I suppose, to have the Exodus reading there is that it actually links the Lord's Supper, what we celebrate, Eucharist, some like to call it Mass, it links that with the Passover. There are deep roots in the Passover, in fact. You see, at the Passover, what was being celebrated every year after that first Passover was that God delivered the people of Israel out of slavery. And to this day, our Jewish friends will celebrate the Passover because God delivered the people from slavery. Of course, what Jesus does is he puts a twist on it, a messianic twist. He's the Messiah, he's come as the Messiah, and so he gathers his friends around the table to celebrate Passover in that upper room. And what he ends up doing is instituting a new remembrance, a new thing to remember, and that is that God, through Jesus Christ, has delivered us from slavery. The slavery is different, though. This isn't Egyptians whipping us, making us carry heavy bricks and build pyramids or whatever. But this is the slavery to sin. Slavery to sin. And so in this first part, Jesus institutes it by taking bread, giving thanks, breaking it, and saying to his disciples, "Take this and eat. This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in fact, that in remembrance is more like, do this in order to not forget me. In fact, it's known as the anamnesis in the Greek, to not forget. And so he also takes the cup. And after giving thanks, he gives it to them and says, "Take and drink. This is my blood of a new covenant, a new promise, which is shed for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Whenever you do this, do it in remembrance of me. Do it to not forget me, to not forget that God has delivered us from the slavery of sin." The second thing that we commemorate at this time is the foot washing. Now, we're not going to be able to gather and do that this year. There are a few profound things in the foot washing, and we see in our gospel reading how Peter sort of blunders through it. He doesn't quite understand what it's all about. Here is Jesus going down to the feet of his disciples, and that has a very serious connotation to it. To sit at someone's feet, to be at their feet, to wash their feet was a real act of humility in the cultural sense for people during Jesus' time. It had the connotation that you were coming under the authority of that person. And that's a very interesting concept at this time, I believe, because to come under the authority of the world for Jesus was the ultimate act of humility. Why would he come under that authority when he is already under the authority of God the Father? Well, I believe that it's an act of obedience, that God called him to do that, to serve the world in the most profound way, and in only a matter of hours from what we commemorate with the foot washing, we know that Jesus serves humankind in the ultimate way, and that is to give his life. And so for me, it's really profound that he goes to the feet of the disciples. But then he says to them, now you go and do likewise. You do what I've done. To who? I don't think he's saying to your friends. I don't think he's saying just to your family. I believe that Jesus is saying, what I'm doing for the world, you go and do for the world as well. Serve the world. And so this year, I'm going to encourage you at home to, instead of wash one another's feet, if you're not alone, if you are alone, you can still do this exercise on your own. But instead of washing feet, I think it's profound during this time of COVID-19, of this coronavirus, that we wash hands. That's what we're being told to do by the medical profession. That's what we're being told to do by politicians, by scientists, by people out there in the world also serving the world. And to me, this is an ultimate act of humility when the church will do the same. We wash hands because I think it captures the sense of what Jesus was doing at the foot washing. We are here to serve the world at this time. One of the best ways we can do it is by complying with what science is telling us, complying with what our leaders are telling us to do, like the lockdown, staying at home, and all of those things, the physical distancing. And so as we wash hands, and you might want to wash one another's hands, just do so for long enough in soapy water and use the sanitizers afterwards once your hands are dry. But please do this knowing that we are called to serve the world. You know, there are still Christians around the world who are of the belief that they're immune to this because they are the children of God. And I think that that's an absolute lie. As in the words of Beth Moore, we're servants, not snake handlers. And so we're also here to protect one another by washing our own hands, and in that very symbolic way of serving the world. So please go ahead and do that, as I am going to do with my family now, but I'll be at home when I do that.
Pray that I may
The third part of the service is the stripping of the altar. We're going to do that as well. The stripping of the altar is a reminder of our own sin. To me, it's always a reminder of how the disciples, Jesus' friends, the crowd who were shouting Barabbas, how they all abandoned Jesus at the end. Very, very few people at the foot of the cross, eventually, when Jesus died. He was abandoned. He suffered that abandonment. He also felt abandoned by God the Father. And so everything went dark. We all know from accounts of people who suffer from clinical depression that many of them, when they try to describe what depression is like, describe it as darkness. They say it's just like everything goes dark, everything goes gloomy. And I believe that's kind of what happens when Jesus is crucified. I'm also reminded at the stripping of the altar of the many things in my life that cause me to abandon Jesus. And I invite you to do the same while the Psalm 22 is read out. And you'll hear those familiar words of abandonment. My God, why have you forsaken me? When Jesus repeats things like that, in fact, in the Hebrew language, it's normally a lament. It's normally associated with tears. You hear David, when his son dies, he cries out, Absalom, Absalom. At Lazarus' tomb, he cries out, Martha, Martha. And then we hear that Jesus wept. When Jesus cries over Jerusalem, a different kind of crying, because when Jesus wept at the tomb, there were tears of compassion. Now, when Jesus cries out, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, it's also a lament. But those are tears of deep, deep grief. And now Jesus, and perhaps some of us, cry tears when we hear the psalm, My God, my God.
My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me and from the words of my groaning? My God, I cry to you by day, but you do not answer, and by night also I take no rest. But you continue holy, you that are the praise of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and they were saved. They put their trust in you and were not confounded. But as for me, I am a worm and no man, the scorn of men and despised by the people. All those that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out their lips at me and wag their heads, saying, He trusted in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him deliver him if he delights in him. But you are he that took me out of the womb, that brought me to lie at peace on my mother's breast. On you have I been cast since my birth. You are my God, even from my mother's womb. Oh, go not from me, for trouble is hard at hand, and there is none to help. Many oxen surround me, fat bulls of Bashan close me in on every side. They gape wide their mouths at me, like lions that roar and rend. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart within my breast is like melting wax. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue clings to my gums. My hands and my feet are withered, and you lay me in the dust of death. For many dogs are come about me, and a band of evildoers hem me in. I can count all my bones. They stand staring and gazing upon me. They part my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. O Lord, do not stand afar off. You are my helper. Hasten to my aid. Deliver my body from the sword, my life from the power of the dogs. O save me from the lion's mouth, and my afflicted soul from the horns of the wild oxen. I will tell of your name to my brethren. In the midst of the congregation will I praise you. O praise the Lord, all you that fear him. Hold him in honour, O seed of Jacob, and let the seed of Israel stand in awe of him. For he has not despised nor abhorred the poor man in his misery, nor did he hide his face from him, but heard him when he cried. From you springs my praise in the great congregation. I will pay my vows in the sight of all that fear you. The meek shall eat of the sacrifice and be satisfied, and those who seek the Lord shall praise him. May their hearts rejoice forever. Let all the ends of the earth remember and turn to the Lord, and let all the families of the nations worship before him. For the kingdom is the Lord's, and he shall be ruler over the nations. How can those who sleep in the earth do him homage, or those that descend to the dust bow down before him? But he has saved my life for himself, and my posterity shall serve him. This shall be told of the Lord to a future generation, and his righteousness declared to a people yet unborn, that he has done it.